Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we will be starting sections 2.5 and 2.6, which means we're really going to start hitting hard this idea of factoring. So when we're looking at our standards, A.SSE.3a, I can factor polynomial expressions. We already looked at factoring out the greatest common factor. Now we're going to specifically start looking at like factoring, and how we get those polynomials from standard form into factored form. So 2.5 and 2.6, factoring trinomials. First of all, definitions of factoring. Again, I'm not going to give a really formal definition here. I'm just going to put down it's the opposite of multiplying. So at the beginning of this chapter, we looked at how do we multiply polynomials. We can distribute, we can use a table, we multiply something out, we write it in standard form. Now I'm going to give you a polynomial in standard form, and you're going to factor it back out into factored form. So it's kind of like the opposite. You go backwards. Now, this is specifically factoring trinomials. Trinomials means we have three terms. So if you look at letter A, you have x squared plus 10x plus 16. And in order to do this, there's a lot of different ways to factor, but I really like factoring by grouping, and you're going to see here what I mean in a minute. So we've got a couple steps we're going to follow, and I'm going to try to remember them as I go. So step number one, we first need to check that the leading coefficient is positive. And at the same time, you're going to check, is there a GCF? If either of these things are not true or are not met, you need to deal with it. So my leading term here, my leading coefficient, I've got an x squared. It's positive. That's a good thing. So I don't need to worry about is it positive. And then I'm going to look, is there a greatest common factor between an x squared, a 10x, and a 16? If there is, then you need to take it out. So x squared has a 1, a 10, a 16. There's nothing in there that I can take out. X squared, x, no x. There's nothing in there I can take out. So step one, we've looked at it. We don't have to do anything about it. Okay. Step two, I'm just going to write multiply first and last number. Okay, so what I mean by that, first number is sitting up here in front of my leading term. Last number is sitting back here. So my first number, it's hiding, but there's a 1. So 1 times 16 is 16. And then I'm going to record that over here in this little graphic organizer. Okay, and that's all it is. It's a graphic organizer. If you don't like it, you can use a table, you can use whatever you want, but we're going to put that there, and we're going to write multiply because we multiplied the first and the last number to get there. Step 3, add to middle number. Okay, so middle number, that's right there. Middle number is 10. Okay, and we're just taking the 10. We're not taking the x's. We're just dealing with the numbers here. And then I'm going to write add. Okay, now at this point in time, we're going to play a little game of what's called guess and check. And some of you really like this and some of you really hate this, and I apologize, but really this is just a game of guess and check. So over here on our sides, we need to play this game of guess and check, and you need to give me two numbers that will multiply to 16 but add to 10. So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, multiply to 16. Well, that would be 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. But what is 4 plus 4? Well, that's 8. And I wanted 10. So this was a guess, but it doesn't work. So we're going to guess again. What else will multiply to 16? 8 times 2, right? Okay. So 8 times 2 is 16. 8 plus 2 is 10. Bam, I found the numbers I want. So at this point, I'm going to move on to step 4, and I'm going to rewrite middle term. And what I mean by rewrite middle term is you're going to take this middle term And instead of 10x, do you remember this 8 you found and this 2 you found? You're going to rewrite it as 8x plus 2x. So ask yourself the question, what is 8x plus 2x? Oh, it's 10x. So I didn't really change anything. I just rewrote it. Okay? And then at this point, you're going to drop down. So you still have that plus 16 and you still have that x squared. So you just drop those down. You don't change those, just drop it down. Number 5, grouping. Okay, what I mean by grouping is we're going to make some groups here. So I'm going to take my first 2. Oops, I wanted black. I'm going to take my first 2. I'm going to group them. I'm going to take my second 2. I'm going to group them. So you do some grouping. And once you do your grouping, you're going to look at your first 2 and you're going to go, okay, well, what is the GCF? So maybe I should make this step 6. GCF of each group. Okay, so x squared plus 8x. What is the greatest common factor that can come out of an x squared and an 8x? And the answer to that is an x. I can take an x out of here and an x out of here. So if I'm factoring by GCF, I pull out my x, I put it in the front, and then you tell me what's left over. X squared divided by x, I have 2 x's, I take one away, I have 1 left. Plus 8x divided by x, well, I would take the x, it would go away, but I would still have my 8. That's my first group. Now my second group, what can come out of a 2x and a 16? And the answer would be 2. Now ask yourself a question, is that a positive 2 or is that a negative 2? Well, we're taking out a positive 2, so when you record it, you're going to record it as a positive 2. Make sure you have the positive. Then if I take 2x divided by 2, I'm left with an x. And if I take 16 divided by 2, I'm left with an 8. Now I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to, oh, there's another GCF. If I have x times x plus 8, and I have 2 times x plus 8, what do both of those groups, this group here and this group here, have in common? And the answer is x plus 8. So I'm going to do the GCF again of this group and this group, and I'm going to factor out an x plus 8. I'm going to take it out of the first one, and I'm going to take it out of the second one. Now, just like when you do GCF, if you're doing GCF, you take it out, you put it in the front, and then behind it, you put a parenthesis, and you tell me what's left over. So, get rid of the x plus 8. I have an x left over. Get rid of the x plus 8. I have a positive 2 left over. So now I'm factored into x plus 8 times x plus 2, and you're done. So we wanted to write that in factored form. It's x plus 8 times x plus 2, and now we need to check our work. Okay, so I actually want to prove to you that this actually worked. So the way we check our work is the opposite of factoring is multiplying, so we're going to multiply it back out. In order to do that, I'm going to do the distributive property. So I don't want to mess up my problem, so I'm just going to rewrite it. X plus 8 times x plus 2. Take the x, distribute it. X times x is x squared. Take the x, distribute it. X times 2 is 2x. Take the 8, distribute it. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 2 is 16. Combine like terms, 2x plus 8x is 10x, and then plus 16, and drop down the x squared. So x squared plus 10x plus 16 is what we started with. So that tells me we did a good job. This is, whoops, I'm sorry. This down here is your standard form. This right here is your factored form, and ultimately this is our answer because we wanted to write it in factored form. So that is how you factor a trinomial. Let's try it again. Okay, so letter D. And I realize I'm not going A, B, C, so just pay attention to what I'm doing here. This is letter D, x squared minus 8x plus 12. So I hope you wrote down that list. If you didn't, you can pause and go back, write down that list of steps. I believe there are 6 of them. We're going to follow those 6. So step 1, we have to make sure that the leading term is positive. Yes, it is. That's great. Then we also have to check, is there a greatest common factor between these 3 terms? And the answer is no. Okay, they don't all have an x, they don't all have a number. So step 1, we're good. Okay, now going back, step 2, multiply the first and the last number. So I'm going to take my last number, 12, my first number, 1. It's hiding, but it's there. So 12 times 1 is going to get me 12. Next step, add to the middle number. So the middle number is negative 8. So this was my add, this was my multiply. Now we play a game of guess and check. What can we multiply to get to 12? And honestly, put your finger over this, cover it up, don't even pay attention to it, and just look at the 12. Give me anything that multiplies to 12. Usually the first option here is 6 times 2. Okay, 6 times 2 is 12. Great. What about 6 plus 2? Well, 6 plus 2 is 8. I want negative 8. So we start playing. Oh, what if I make this negative? Well, a negative times a positive is a negative, and I need a positive. What about a negative times a negative? Isn't a negative times a negative a positive? That'll work. And what's negative 6 plus negative 2? Well, that's negative 8. Bam! There's the numbers you want. So moving on to the next step, we rewrite the middle term. Now, when we rewrite the middle term, you have a negative 8x. We're going to rewrite it with a negative 6x and a negative 2x. Keep in mind, if this has an x, then I just carry the x down here because negative 6x minus 2x should be negative 8x. Okay, we're not changing it, we're just making it look different. Drop down your plus 12, drop down your x squared. Next step, grouping. Group the first 2, group the second 2. Take a look at the first 2. We're doing GCF. What is the greatest common factor between an x squared and a negative 6x? I can get an x. Put your x out front. Tell me what's left over. X squared divided by x, x. Negative 6x divided by x, negative 6. Take a look at your next 2. What can you get out of a negative 2x and a positive 12? And be very careful here. Yes, you can get a 2, but do you notice what kind of 2 this is? And it's always that, it's kind of like when we start back here and I said, oh, is your leading term positive? Well, yeah, this is kind of the leading term now because it's the first one in that parenthesis. It's not positive, so yeah, I can get a 2, but you're going to want to take a negative 2. So you're going to record it as a negative 2. Okay, then tell me what's left over. So negative 2x divided by negative 2 is positive x, and 12 divided by negative 2 is minus 6. At this point in time, this is a good place to stop and check. Look at those parentheses. Do you notice the black parentheses say x minus 6 and the red parentheses say x minus 6? If those are not the same, you have a problem. Okay? If they're not the same, either A, this cannot be factored, or B, you probably screwed up. Go back and figure something out. But they are the same. So I'm going to take an x minus 6 out of the first one. And I'm going to take an x minus 6 out of the second one. And I'm going to put my x minus 6 down here because it is my greatest common factor. And I'm going to set up a parenthesis behind that, and I'm going to tell me what's left over. So if I get rid of the x minus 6, I'm left with an x. If I get rid of an x minus 6, I'm left with a negative 2. And you are done. That is your answer in factored form. Now, this is the last one I'm actually going to check. From here on out, I will let you check them. But if we do check it, we're going to take our x minus 6. We're going to multiply that by our x minus 2. So take your x, distribute it to your x, x squared. Take your x, distribute it to your -2, -2x. Take your -6, distribute it to your x, -6x. Take your -6, distribute it to your -2, +12. Combine your like terms, -8x. Drop down your +12. Drop down your x squared. X squared minus 8x plus 12. Up here, x squared minus 8x plus 12. There you go. So that tells me we factored it right. We did good. Next one. Okay, 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. I'm going to start moving a little quicker. If I go too fast, that's okay. This is a video. You pause it, try it on your own, and then play the video and see how you did. So, step 1. Is the leading term positive? Yes. Is there a greatest common factor? Ooh, yes. So this time, before we do anything, we've got to take out the greatest common factor. And all of these share a 5. So I'm going to put my 5. I'm going to factor it out. 5x squared divided by 5 is simply x squared. 15x divided by 5 is 3x. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now, from here, I'm going to circle this. I'm going to put a star next to it. And then I'm going to forget about it. Just leave him there. Okay? He comes in later. But my next step is I take the last number and I multiply it by the first number. So 2 times 1, 2. Then we add to the middle number, 3. So guess and check what multiplies to 2. Well, you don't have a lot of options here. 2 times 1. Is 2 times 1, if I add them, equal to 3? Absolutely. So I rewrite my middle term. 2x plus 1x. Does that in fact equal 3x? Yes, it does. If it doesn't, then again, you have a problem. Stop and fix it. Bring down your +2 on the end. Bring down your x squared on the end. And then your next step, grouping. Take a look at your first two. What can you get out of an x squared and a 2x? You can get an x. Record your x, put your parenthesis, tell me what's left over. X squared divided by x is x. 2x divided by x is 2. Take a look at your next two. What can you get out of an x and a 2? Nothing. But what can you really get? 1. Okay? 1 is your placeholder. You need a placeholder. So we're going to take out a +1. And again, it's +1. You better record it as +1. And then if you're taking out a 1, it really doesn't change anything. X plus 2. Now again, check those parentheses. X plus 2, x plus 2. If they're not the same, we have a problem. But they are. So we're going to take out an x plus 2. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Record your x plus 2. And then tell me what's left over. The first set, I have an x. The second set, I have a 1. And again, that's your placeholder. You need it. And you're done. You're factored. That's beautiful. But do you remember up here? We took out that GCF and I told you to circle it and forget about it. What do you think we're going to do with that now? Just bring it down. And there you go. Okay, you take the time, you go check that, FOIL it back out, and then multiply by 5. I'm going to move on. Letter E. Okay, factoring. Step 1. Is the leading term positive? Yes, it is. Is there a greatest common factor between these 3 terms? No, there's not. So, next step, multiply the first number by the last number. What do you notice about the first number this time? It's not 1. That's okay. So this time, 3 times 2, 6. Add to the middle number, -7. Okay, people, what multiplies to 6? 3 times 2? What's 3 plus 2? Well, that's 5. That's not going to work. Okay, 6 times 1? Yeah, that'll probably add to 7, but we have a problem with negatives. So I'm going to try a negative times a negative, which is still a positive. And a negative 6 plus a negative 1. Yeah, that's negative 7. That'll do it. So we're going to rewrite. Again, if there's an x here, we just use that x. So negative 6x, negative 1x, negative 6x minus x, negative 7x. Good. Okay, add 2, drop down the 3x squared. Grouping. Group the first two, group the second two. Greatest common factor of the first two. Yeah, you can get an x, but this time, I'm thinking you could actually get a 3x. So I record my 3x, and then you tell me what's left over. So 3x squared divided by 3x, x minus 2. Next one, negative x positive 2. And not a whole lot, but do you notice what kind of x this is? I really don't like that being a negative x. Negative 1. Recorded as a negative 1, which is going to flip that to x minus 2, which is good because now I have an x minus 2 and an x minus 2. If you didn't take out that negative, then these parentheses would not match. Okay, both sets have an x minus 2. So we're going to record that x minus 2, and then you're going to tell me what's left over. So we've got a 3x, and we've got a negative 1, and there you go. Now, some of you usually ask, and I forgot to address this, what if I were to write my answer as 3x minus 1 times x minus 2? That's fine. Okay, that's the same thing. It doesn't matter. I will accept either answer. In fact, it kind of depends. Back up in this step, if you were to record the negative x and then the negative 6, it would get you down to this answer. It doesn't matter if you flip-flop. You're still going to get the same answer. It's just going to be in a different order. Perfectly okay. Letter C. Step 1. Is the leading coefficient positive? No. That's a problem. We need to fix that. Is there a greatest common factor? No. So the only thing I have to worry about here is getting rid of that negative. So I'm going to take out a negative 1. Now again, some teachers might argue with me about this because yes, you can do it with the negative, but I don't want you doing that. So for the sake of our class, you take out that negative. So negative 1, which is going to make it a positive 4x squared, a positive 8x, and a negative 5. Okay, so now the leading coefficient is positive, and there still is no GCF. So we go from there. Multiply the last number by the first number. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Add to the middle number, 8. Multiply to 20. 5 times 4. 5 plus 4, well, first of all, one of them would have to be negative, but 5, 6, 7, that's 9. I need, oh, no. Okay, 10 and 2. Well, one of them has to be negative because 10 times 2 is positive 20. So I'm thinking this one because 10 plus negative 2 is positive 8. Okay, so I've got a positive 2 or positive 10, negative 2. Rewrite your middle term. Positive 10x, negative 2x. 10x minus 2x. Is that 8x? Yep, we're good. Drop down the minus 5. Drop down the 4x squared. Put a plus. Take this guy. Put a star next to him. Forget about him. Grouping. 4x squared, 10x. 2x. Record your 2x. What's left over? 4x squared divided by 2x is 2x. Plus 10x divided by 2x, 5. Next set of parentheses, negative 2x, negative 5. Again, 2 and 5, no, but negative, negative 1. Record the negative 1, which is going to flip this to a positive 2x and a positive 5, which is what we want, because if you look at that other set of parentheses, they got to match. Okay, so now that they match, 2x plus 5, 2x plus 5. So then I'm going to record my 2x plus 5. I'm going to go with what's left over. So first one, I've got a 2x. Second one, I've got a negative 1. And we're almost done. Don't forget what? Don't forget the negative 1. If you were to just record a negative there, like, and you didn't have the 1, that's the same thing, that's fine. But, you know, in this case, put your negative 1. And then go back, check your answer, you can FOIL it out, and we're good to go. Okay, last one of these. Letter F, negative 8x squared plus 56x minus 48. Step 1. And at this point in time, you should really be able to pause this video and do this on your own. And then just start the video and, you know, fast forward and see if you got it right. But leading coefficient, positive 1? No. So first of all, I know I'm going to have to at least take out a negative. Second of all, is there a greatest common factor? I'm thinking yes. So 8, 56, 48. I'm pretty sure all of those are divisible by 8. So we're going to take out a negative 8, which is going to leave me with positive x squared minus 7x plus 6. Now that we did step 1, our leading coefficient is now positive. We're going to multiply the first and the last. So 6 times 1 is 6. Add to the middle, negative 7. Multiply to 6. 6 times 1, and actually this looks really familiar. 6 times 1 is 6. Negative 6 times negative 1 is still 6, and negative 6 times negative 1 is negative 7. So we're going to rewrite negative 6x, negative 1x, in fact adds to negative 7x. We're going to drop down that 6. We're going to drop down that x squared. We're going to keep an eye on this guy for later, but nobody cares about him right now. Then we're going to do some grouping. Take a look at your first two. X squared, negative 6x. I can get an x. What's left over? X minus 6. Second two. Not much, but you can get a negative 1. Negative 1, x minus 6. Parentheses match. Take out x minus 6. Record your x minus 6. What's left over? An x. What's left over? A negative 1. And whatever you do, do not forget the negative 8. And I yell at you guys and tell you that, but honestly, I'll forget it all the time. So if we're in class doing this, or even on a video, if I forget to bring that thing down, tell me about it, because I'll forget.